Hi there, this is Dennis Velko with Out Bureau, your website for LGBT professional and entrepreneurial endeavors. You are listening to this week's episode of Out Bureau Podcast, again, where we bring you interesting and lively and sometimes, hopefully, entertaining conversations with LGBT entrepreneurs and professionals, as well as community leaders spanning the globe. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you are watching this on YouTube, take a few moments and subscribe right now. Hit that subscribe button as well as the bell. That will ensure that you are notified as soon as new episodes come available. Also, you are able to subscribe/follow us in places such as Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and about 10 other podcasts so that you can listen to Out Bureau Voices on the go, at the gym, in your car, on your way to work, doing house chores, lying on the beach, and so much more. Tune in with every episode to Out Bureau Voices. And today we are very happy to have David Clive Price. He is an author, a mental health specialist, and an all-around guru on building change and leadership into your life. Thank you so much for joining us today, David.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here, Dennis.
Wonderful, wonderful. And you are hailing from across the pond as from the UK, correct?
Yes, from Blighty, as they called it. During the war, they called it Blighty. So Old Blighty,
Okay.
at the UK, United Kingdom, yes.
Wonderful. And for our viewers and listeners, what area of the UK are you coming from?
I'm coming from, speaking from London.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
So
Gorgeous city. So, well, David, why don't we kind of jump into you giving us a bit of your background, which is very rich and diverse. And of course, we strive for about an hour. I know you could probably speak for 6 or more hours with as much as gone on and your interesting books. But let's give a little overview as to your background, and then we'll lead into kind of a chronological step up from back then through your current projects.
Sounds great. Well, let me plunge straight in and say that I help entrepreneurs and LGBTQ professionals to overcome mental health challenges such as fear, anxiety, and addiction, so that they can face their hidden demons and create a more fulfilled life and abundant business. So I'm the author of Bamboo Strong, Cultural Intelligence Secrets to Succeed in the New Global Economy, and more recently, The Age of Pluralism, Global Intelligence for Emerging Leaders.
Okay.
So
tell us just a little bit about the Bamboo Strong. That's an interesting title.
Yeah, well, as the title suggests, it's to do with bending in the wind, if you like, metaphorically. Mm-hmm. Strong, but also resistant, strong, but flexible and agile. And that is the central thesis of the book, really, which is based on my own travels and experiences around the world, particularly in Asia Pacific, but also in the States, in Europe, in South America, with different countries and cultures and backgrounds, dealing with people of difference, of differences, in other words. And the book has as its framework what's called the Cultural Intelligence, or CQ model, a 4-part model to help you relate with, make relationships with, negotiate with, understand the differences of, and create emotional intelligence for dealing with people of many backgrounds and cultures, races, generations, and creeds. So the book goes on a journey through my own life experiences, but using this CQ model.
Okay, well, that certainly in all times, but especially in today's sensitive times here in the United States with racial tensions and so
Yes.
forth, I'm sure that your book would be Bamboo Strong would be an excellent read for anyone, but particularly those in at whatever leadership positions you might find yourself in, whether that's leadership in an organization, be it an employer or even a community nonprofit. Sounds like a really good read, especially now in today's times.
Yes, and we're dealing with a great deal of tension around diversity and inclusion. We have maybe a lot of celebration of diversity, as we've had this month for Gay Pride, of course, but not so much necessarily for inclusion. Uh, that's both in society at large and in companies and corporations, etc. So there's a great deal more education needed on the diversity and inclusion front, which this book attempts to help with. And the follow-up book, which is called The Age of Pluralism, Global Intelligence for Emerging Leaders. So those are in the slightly younger generations too. Again, with its own framework for dealing with differences, personal, cultural, generational.
All right.
So that is the background to my, shall we say, multiracial, multicultural work. And at the same time, the kind of qualities and capabilities that are required for working together well with people of many different backgrounds are similar to those that we need in our mental health challenges, which are also so current, and particularly now with the global pandemic, increasingly current in an increasing pandemic of mental health issues of all kinds. So agility, looking within, discovering inner resources, empathy, emotional intelligence. These are the kind of leadership issues and personal issues that my books and my frameworks address.
Okay, and just for our audience, I do believe we didn't state you're also, if I'm not mistaken, a psychologist.
No, I'm not a qualified practitioner as a
Oh, okay.
psychologist. No, I'm a PhD, so I'm
Oh,
a
okay. So
doctor.
sorry. Gotcha.
So,
Sorry, my mistake.
but not
I
a,
don't have my glasses on to look at my notes. Okay, but definitely interesting topics. And what is your PhD in?
it's in Renaissance history, actually.
Oh, wow.
So I took a great interest in history at college and at school, indeed. And then at Cambridge, I studied the Renaissance and actually Renaissance music
Oh,
and the Elizabethan courts and country houses of England in the
oh,
English
very.
Renaissance. That's what kicked off my interest. And then I had a fellowship from the British Academy to go over to Italy.
Okay.
And I studied the Northern Italian Renaissance courts
Oh, wow.
for 2 years before I eventually.
A beautiful period, but I would not want to live in that era. Just, being obviously also a gay person, assuming that I would
Yeah,
have been a gay person then as well. But what's interesting though is, from your PhD in history, looking at that, and your travels in and around, you've lived in so many places around the world, in Asia, in Africa, US, and so forth. And, being able to take a look at a historical and a cultural perspective, because I firmly believe that for leaders and for you as an individual to really look forward, you also have to be able to look in the past. And it's not dwell on the past, but it is acknowledge the past, right? So just like if you're wanting to make changes in your own life, changes in your behaviors, you
Good
have to
point.
be able to acknowledge the past, because if you just ignore it, uh, and you have no reference for it when it comes to your own personal issues, then you're less likely to successfully overcome it because you haven't dealt with it properly.
Yes.
And when it comes to a business practice, being able to fully lead and drive new products and services, you know, like new product developments. One of the other guests 2 weeks ago, we talked about how important it is to be able to understand, for example, the adoption of technologies, new products and services, and to understand how your new product or service might be adopted in today. You know, we might,
Yeah.
it might not take us 15 years to adapt, for example, as it did from black and white television to colored television. And of course, now we all have basically one sitting here. And, you know, whenever I grew up, we had the big black, huge console with the built-in huge speakers. I mean, it was a piece of furniture, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And here we are, and same, you know, with you as well. You know, back then, the television, you had one TV per household. It was a coveted item.
Yeah.
Everyone sat around it. Well, now everyone just walks around basically with TV on their phone,
Yes.
and so, you know, that's, but being able to look at the past and say, you know, how did cultures or how did individuals, consumers, or businesses adapt to this is a very strong point in understanding how you can move forward and
Yeah.
where are some gaps, but definitely relates to your mental
Yes.
mental challenges and mental opportunities.
Yeah. Looking into your past, yes, or looking into analyzing the stories that you tell yourself. That's one of the lead strategies in Hidden Demons, which
Okay.
is, we have some of them are conscious stories, but many of them are unconscious stories. They may lay hidden within us that we're not entirely aware of, and they may, in some curious way, still dictate our behavior, and perhaps our mental health challenges as well. So being able to analyze the stories or look within yourself for the stories, I think these are a big, and that relates more generally on a wider scale to being able to look at our history, to being able to look at the history of other cultures and of other people,
Okay.
putting things in context, and to have more than one perspective in mind at the same time. These are
Got,
all, yeah. So these are all
gotcha. And you know,
important. Yeah.
I've heard some other people. Perhaps this is. I'll try to explain as I understand it, and perhaps it's explaining exactly what you said in a slightly different way. But I'd love to hear from you if it's the similar kind of concept. And through some of the work that I've done, I've heard it called. They termed it as your programming, right? Having
Yes.
tracks of ingrained conscious and unconscious memory as programming. And so, you know, for example, if you grew up with a parent who from an early age gave you the signals that you were not worthy, you are not
Yes.
going to amount to anything, be it verbal and or just through their actions, through not paying attention to you, through not helping you with your schoolwork, and then, well, you know, I knew you weren't going to do well in that, so why bother? That's laying down programming within the brain that says, I'm not worth spending time with, I'm not good at anything, and so it can affect how then you see the world, view and interpret and interact with the world today.
Yeah. And then of
and
course,
and so there's ways also. Does your book, Modern Demons, goes into ways to kind of rewrite those stories or rewrite those programs?
It goes very much into how we can use those stories to move forward. Of course, for LGBTQ people, often the coming out story is the biggest story of all. And, you know, all the, what should we say, the influx of emotions and secrecy and shame, perhaps, that goes before coming out, especially to your family. These can have reverberations throughout your life, unless you're aware of them. And of course, we can address these demons by becoming aware of them. And that means looking at them. It sounds simple, but it's not so simple in reality to look at these
Right.
stories, right?
Yes. Well, because, you know, it is such a struggle, and it's partly, you know, the underlying reasoning why so many, you know, study after study show that, and some of these studies I have written about, some of them I've just not gotten around to, but they're out there, so do Google them, folks. Is, you know, study after study shows that LGBTQ persons suffer from higher levels or more frequent levels of anxiety and depression,
Mm.
more higher attempts of suicide. There's just there's lots of studies in and around the LGBTQ mental health, and
Yes.
that I think goes a lot into, you know, the rejections, be it because of religion, different religions around the world, who, you know, preach and or
Mm.
whatever they call it. I mean, I know I don't want to misspeak for other religions and cultures, but, you know, I grew up in a very fundamentalist right wing environment myself. To
Mm.
this day, my
Mm.
own father is extremely right wing. I can't even say the word community without him beginning to quote scripture. So,
Oh.
and I know what part of that has done for me, and I'm not going to get into the whole story.
Mm.
I've been told I could write books about my youth and teenage years, not all centered around me, but all centered around religion and how it was used in a very negative way. And so I really get, that's one thing why this really stuck out to me, because I personally know how those stories, you know, sometimes you'll find, or anecdotally, that LGBT people work, you know, X number, you know, X times harder, X times more. And it's like we're always trying to prove ourselves.
Prove ourselves. Yes, exactly. Yeah.
And I think it's trying to overcome those stories, overcome those programming. But then there's also a string of self-destruction, also
Mm.
kind of going into those programmings or stories, as you call them. And it's like, well, if I'm not worthy, why bother? Why shouldn't I just drink myself into a stupor every night? No one
Mm.
cares, right? I mean, that's the programming that gets put into your mind. If I'm not worthy enough for my own family, for my own
Mm.
parents' love and my own father's acceptance and my own mother's acceptance, or my own siblings' acceptance, then why should I even exist? So who cares? I'll just go out and party every night and have fun, because I'm not going to live anyways, because, you know, all those negative kind of stories come in and can lead to a life and a
Mm.
lifestyle of kind of nonchalantness. Yet what's interesting is the dualism. I work. You know, when I say I, you know, putting this in framework of the listener is, you know, you work to try to prove yourself, but then also have these destructive behaviors kind of happening
Yes.
simultaneously. So, could
I
you talk
achieve.
about those?
Yeah. I mean, I maybe had a less intolerant family and mother and father. But there probably was something there that, particularly for my father, that was always kind of in the background, even when I came out, and he more or less accepted it, and my mother more or less accepted it, etc., etc. But just one little example is the school play. I was playing Hamlet. Of course, I was a little achiever too at school, so I had to be, you know, Hamlet in the school play. And I was kind of on the last night, and the parents came along, and I was quite pleased with myself. I thought it went well, and I went up to the balcony later to see them and expected them to say, "Oh, David, that was terrific. You know, we really enjoyed it." And I hardly got a peep. They more or less got up and said, "I think it's time now to go to the car." And I realized that I didn't realize then, but later on thinking about it, it's because they thought that confirmed certain tendencies. This was before I came out, to be fair. You know, confirm certain tendencies. And it's, you know, you're always achieving. A lot of people, a lot of LGBTQ people continue to achieve throughout their lives, and always with a slight sense of they're not quite good enough, which is what I explore in the book as well. That however much you do, whatever success you have, there's something not quite right. And I have clients in my global LGBTQ leaders program now who do talk about this kind of underlying unease, but and needing to refine their purpose. And listening to those stories that I said earlier, that's one of the techniques that we use, is to go deeper down. And then living in the present too, that's another big strategy, that we're always projecting unease or dissatisfaction onto the future, or will it realize my fears that I had when I was a child, or when I was an adolescent, or a young man? Will the next 10 years, will the next 5 years, will something go wrong? Even when we've got, you know, everything going for us, will something go wrong? Which is, you know, one of the things that we have to deal with and come out on the other side of. Personally, I struggled with alcoholism, depression, anxiety. Not constantly. I achieved in between. You know, I was a speechwriter for one of the world's largest banks. I wrote several travel books about different countries around the world, Asia, etc. And but I always rebounding to alcohol, even though I'd found my life's true love in Hong Kong. So, you know, there's always a sort of underlying, eventually I got through it. And now I'm a reasonably successful entrepreneur and life coach. But, you know, you have to go through certain phases, unfortunately, as a gay man, or at least be aware of them, or as an LGBTQ person, or at least be aware of them, because they are there to trip you up. And that's why the book is called Hidden Demons: How to Overcome Fear and Anxiety and Addiction to Thrive in Uncertain Times.
Okay. Well, and this, you know, for those listening and watching, this is about dealing with your past and helping to frame that and put perspective around it. You can't change your past, but you can change the way you view it. That's your choice. Okay. Yes. You can't change what people have said to you and done to you. However, what you can choose is how you react and respond to that, because it's you who control you, right?
Yeah.
If someone makes you angry, no, they didn't. You made yourself angry. You chose to take that reaction and take that response. If someone disrespected you, no, you chose to take it that way. It's all in your own choices right here. Has nothing to do with the other person.
Mm.
they're going about their lives. If, if you happen to be like me, and even as a 2 Christmases ago, I mean, it was chaotic. My father was asking about me moving further south, which was to Fort Lauderdale. Oh, well, why are you moving down there? And, I've learned throughout the years to avoid keywords that would set him into his religious tirades. And finally, but he has learned, keep pressing Dennis with question and question and question and question until I hear the question, or until I hear the trigger, and then I get to go off and I can justify it and I can be my religious asshole self. Well,
Yeah.
do you know what that particular Christmas was? I
Mm.
stopped reacting. I simply put my finger
Ah.
inches from his nose and I said, stop. You stop. I'm a 50-year-old man and I will not tolerate it any longer. It's your choice. You will not get me upset, but I will not tolerate it. We
Yeah.
chose to say that we are going to respect each other. And that means if you ask me a question, you have to be adult enough to listen to the answer. And
Mm.
so that was a big step for me.
Yeah.
And I've always have been the person who pushed and asked questions and questions, and we've always, as I like to say, we've always had great pleasantry conversations. Pleasantries, just talking about the little niceties, gardening, housework, and so forth. But when it comes to and his job and all of that, but really not about life, you know.
Mm.
And and that's unfortunate, but you can't change other people. You have to be able to take your life and control you. And
That's right.
sometimes you have to put boundaries on other people because they purposely try
Mm.
to poke and prod, which
Yeah.
is what he did for years.
Mm.
It's
Yeah.
kind of childish. But so
But you're
so how
right.
do
You
you?
you control you. I think that's very right. You
Yes,
control you. Yeah. I like that.
exactly.
Yes.
Yes, you control you.
You are not
So
controlled by the outside forces, whatever they are,
uh,
external forces. You control you. Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And so when you then utilize books like these, and all of them sound like incredible, worthy reads, is you're then able to put those into perspective and put your own history to perspective and say, all right, and the past is the past. You can't change it. You can't change the way you reacted and responded based on those triggers that were very ingrained, that programming that was very ingrained. But what you can do is you can change the way you react. It's
Mm.
just like stopping drinking or okay, I will share something with you guys here. Okay, so if you've even just listened to these, about 3 years ago, I had a divorce and a 17-year relationship. Well, me being me, because I've had a 2, a 9, and a 17-year relationship. So I've been in relationships like 98% of my adult life, and not always good. I would stay in them for all kinds of reasons, convenience, um, just I would stay in bad relationships. But so just 3.5 months after being out of the, well, 3.5 months of being on my own, living on my own, what does Dennis do? Basically, next guy that comes along, bam,
Bang.
within a month, we're living together. I mean, as my friends like to say, Dennis, you're as bad as U-Haul packing lesbians. As soon as you start dating someone, you're like, boom, boom, boom. You're picking out the next China patterns. So I'm like, oh, OMG. Well, this fella smokes cigarettes. I've never
Mm.
smoked cigarettes in my life. Outside of here or there, one or two, kind of a thing now and then, like once a year kind of thing. And this guy smokes regularly, constantly, almost every day, says he's going to stop. But as we started to go out, he would, pass me a cigarette. And it's like, oh, okay. And then another, and then another. Then, as I started to stay at his house, he began to leave 2 or 3 a day for me. Then it became 5 or 6. Then it became half a pack. Within about 3 month period, I went from not smoking basically my entire life
Yeah.
to smoking a pack a day.
Yeah.
And it took me almost 2 years. And finally, one day, I just had to say, stop. What the F are you doing?
Hmm.
And
And,
two, I'll be
and
honest, it's turned off other guys that I was interested in.
yeah.
And it's
But
like, if for nothing else, I need to stop because of that, right? But it was that little bit of, I guess, little bit of social programming that happened in a very short time period. So when you now look,
yes, the habit. Yeah.
yes, which create triggers. And
Yes.
also, when you're a child and when you're a young person and you're growing up, also the experiences that you have chemical triggers,
Yes.
and those become
Exactly.
you become addicted to
There you
those
go.
those
Yes.
chemical
Yes.
triggers in the brain.
Yes. But you
And
can unlearn them.
yes, you
That's the
can.
big thing. That's
Yes,
the
you
big
can.
thing. That's what the book talks about a lot. Because
Awesome.
just like fear, anxiety, depression, they are a kind of addiction. They're definitely a habit.
Mm-hmm.
And just like those habits can be unlearned, they can be. You can learn new habits that take their place. Not immediately. Not
Right.
I got a box, one out of the box kind of a quick solution to that. Not immediately, but one step at a time. In my case, one day at a time. I was throwing myself off my bedroom balcony high up in Hong Kong onto the airport expressway. I was about to,
Wow.
and but somehow I came back from that thinking of my loved one. I mean, my other half. Um, but the habit had gone to this extent that I was on the edge of suicide.
Mm-hmm.
The habit also was taking one step back, taking two steps back, thinking of Simon, 3 steps back, getting to the sofa, holding on to the sofa, clutching it, then finding the phone, then finding the Samaritan number from directory inquiries, then then them talking to me. Then by 8 o'clock in the morning, this was like 4 in the morning. By 8 o'clock in the morning, I could get down in the elevator down to the lobby, and then call up a friend, and then go over to a friend's house for 2 days. But the steps back from those black holes in our lives are
Mm.
so important, and everything can be replaced with a new habit. A
Yes,
new
it
habit,
can.
a new habit of sobriety, for example, um, of absence of fear, of not projecting nervousness or anxiety onto the future, of living one day at a time, etc., etc. So
And those new
happiness for
habits
us,
and those new
yeah,
habits taking time is getting where it's kind of going with the that temporary smoking thing. Those new
yeah,
habits, just like I learned that new habit over about a 2 month period, it took about 2 months also for me to, once I finally made the decision, it took about that same amount of time to end. And,
hmm,
those long
yeah,
held ingrained beliefs, as David is saying, they just don't go away immediately because they are long held ingrained
yeah,
stories slash programs, and they take conscious effort to adjust. And so you offer mental well-being life coaching.
yes,
And so do you then help your clients make these adjustments?
yes. That's part of the programs, very much so. Um, they're not all LGBTQ clients, but I do have a special program for LGBTQ professionals.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I help them with these kind of issues with a 6-module, 6-part program, really, to overcome your hidden demons, to lead a more fulfilled and abundant life, and a more satisfying life, with, free of unease, that curious unease that we LGBTQ people have until, in my case, well into my second adulthood or boyhood or whatever I'm in at the moment. So, right.
Well, and you know what? It's no disrespect to, any mental health care practitioner, out there, but when it comes to authenticity, knowing that someone has gone through something, in my personal opinion, makes them more relatable and more, again, no disrespect. And maybe someone in the comments will say, no, that's absolutely not right. You don't have to have been addicted to drugs or alcohol in order to be an effective counselor. No, I guess not. But I've had several people in my life who've gone through rehabilitation from both, and the overarching, or the commonality in the several people that I know, they, again, no, please don't hate on me, whatever, in comments and all of that, but they had a better success, and they opened up more when they knew that their counselor had gone through something that they like wasn't always the exact same thing. Like one was addicted to methamphetamines, unfortunately, which is very rampant in the LGBT community, especially the gay men community. But the person, his counselor, was a recovered alcoholic. That made him just feel more like, oh, you've gone through something, you've overcome something, so therefore you get me. And it was maybe it was just from this one person that a friend has done through. She was a total, like, pristine person, hadn't, perfect life, perfect everything, hadn't had anything, and I don't know if maybe she conveyed too much of that to my friend, but it was just he was not opening up to her, and I think it's because he felt like she was just couldn't relate, like clinically. One thing is to be clinically textbook. The other thing is to have life experiences and wisdom. Does that make sense? And I'm open to people having comments and so forth. If you do, folks, just whatever platform you're on, put comments down below what your thoughts are on that. What are your thoughts on that, David?
Well, I think as a coach in general, as a life coach perhaps in particular, you need trust. You need to build that relationship of trust. And sometimes it's more difficult if you're only working together on a high-powered professional level, or as the achieving coach and the yet to achieve coachee. It's something to do with trust, in particular in these areas of mental health, that is really, really important. Relatable. I think a lot of coaches try to be relatable, and the coaching relationship is based on being relatable and integrity. But sometimes the trust factor is missing, the full trust, and being, as you say, able to relate to someone who's been there and done that in many ways, and has a lot of experiences to tell, which gives me, I'm privileged to do this work, and honored to help people, because I've also been incredibly lucky to have so many experiences all over the world, and to have a rich and diverse background. I'm very lucky if I'm able to say that now. Beforehand, if when I was drinking, I probably, who cares about that? Let's have another one. or I'd end up flat on my back in my Tokyo flat for the 12th time, you know, night after night, waking up at 6 in the morning in your own vomit, etc. You know, and that's after writing a couple of books, and that's after being well respected. I wrote my first novel set in New York, a gay novel, as it happens, called Alphabet City. So I'd had a little bit of success. That the gay writer Edmund White wrote a great review of it and endorsed it, etc. But then I went back to Italy, and then things began to fall to pieces again. And then I'm back on the old vino from, I had a little farm in Italy after I finished my fellowship. Together with my first partner, we bought a little farm. And for 2 or 3, 4 years there, I wrote my first books and was a wine and olive farmer, which I loved, but also tippling the wine. You know, as a wine farmer, you're allowed to tipple the wine at 5 in the morning, right, with a garlic bread and tomato. So while you're doing your vines, so yeah, I've lost the thread now. I've kind of come backwards and forwards so much, but yeah, it's experiences. Yeah, are really really important.
Well, and kind of tying it back to, you know, what we were chatting about a little earlier ago with the specifically the LGBT community and some of the issues that we tend to take on in feeling the oppression and owning that oppression of others, and owning the opinions and the thoughts of others, is, you know, working so hard to be successful on the outside in the professional life, and working, but then on the personal life having, you know, kind of that despair, and having, you know, the going, you know, being crippled by alcoholism or drug addiction or sex addiction. I mean, hey, I'm a healthy healthy guy here, but you know, sometimes there's a lot, you know, and you know, but and it's looking for, trying to fill a void of intimacy, believing, oh, I'm not worthy, so I'm not worthy of love, and I'm not worthy of a meaningful relationship, so therefore I'm just going to, you know, count numbers, is you know, I'm valued based on the number of people that I sleep with kind of mentality, versus, you know, versus the quality of life. And you know, so you saying how you completed those books and were successful, yet, you know, we're waking up in your own vomit, you know, from the night before, is a story that unfortunately is all too often in the LGBT community. And so, you know, taking your own experiences, as I commend you for being able to take, you know, the negative and turn it around to something positive and good, and sharing your life experiences and things that you have overcome, and helping others to do the same. So that is awesome. And what a great way to live your life and give back to others at the same time.
Yeah, and it's a privilege to be able to do so, because it's not only my story, it's the story of all of us, how we can overcome adversity and find fulfillment and true love, and unlearn all those addictive behaviors and learn new positive ones.
Right, absolutely. So, well, we're going to have some wonderful links to, well, we're going to have links to your wonderful books and websites, and how to get in contact with you. Are most of your clients UK based? Do you work with people around the world?
No, I work with people all over the world. Unfortunately, I'm a bit of a linguist too, so if there are any gaps in conversation, sometimes I can fill them. So I've been around the block, Dennis.
That's right. What languages do you speak?
French, German, Italian, and Cantonese.
Oh, okay. Wunderschön.
Wunderschön, ja, eigentlich. Es ist absolut unglaublich. Und vielen Dank,
uh,
Dennis. Dennis has, you have German, you worked, you were stationed in Germany, right?
yes, I
And learned
was
some German there.
correct. Right after high school, well, while I grew up, in addition to being essentially growing up in a very right-wing religious environment, we were borderline poor.
Yeah.
And so I went to the military for college money. And so I had enlisted prior to actually graduating from high school here in the United States. And so I only had 3 weeks off. I graduated whenever I was 17 years old, and I was still 17 when I was through US boot camp in Fort Sill, Oklahoma, and turned 18 years old during my job training. And then within a month was in Germany. So at 18
Wow.
years old was in Germany in a town called Aschaffenburg. That is,
Aschaffenburg.
yes, that's just south of Frankfurt, about 30
Uh-huh.
minutes, 30, 45 minutes south of Frankfurt.
Mm-hmm.
And there, I knew I was gay. Another reason, obviously, too, is I knew I was gay. Okay, I had my first crush at 5 years old.
You might have worked it out by then. Yeah.
Yes, I worked it out. I figured it out, and so, but it was a way for me to get out. I didn't know how else to get out,
Yeah.
and so it solved many problems for me. It got me the hell out of where I was, and it also was going to provide some level of training, some income, and a college money,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So it was the best opportunity for me, and there I met as I was stationed in Aschaffenburg, I would take the train up to, which this could be a whole nother story, but very quickly, I would take the train up to Frankfurt for the weekends and typically stay in a hotel that was right near the Kunstablerwache, which is on the Fußgängerzone, the street pedestrian area.
Mm-hmm.
And back then, the gay bars, the number one gay bar dance club that I would
In
go to way back
Frankfurt.
then in Frankfurt was
Wow.
called Construction 5. It was fantastic. I still remember it like it was yesterday. And I met my
Oh.
first boyfriend there. His name was Uwe Zolke.
Oh.
And then we fell madly in love, and he moved from Frankfurt actually to Aschaffenburg so that we could live together. And
Fantastic.
yeah, so, and then after the military, he worked in import exports. So he always wanted to speak English with me.
Right.
And but then after the military, which I could do a whole episode just me talking about the military, the I got a job helping to open the very first technology call-in center. You know, my computer's broken thing,
Yeah.
and I spoke the German contractors that would go out to fix the computers throughout central and southern Germany. Their main people had to speak English, but I chose to speak German with them. So I
No problem. Yeah.
learned German to the point where I could think and dream in German.
Yeah. Fantastic. And that's
Yeah.
the great thing. Yeah. You learn not only a new language, a new perspective, a new way of thinking about the world, everything from taking that maybe you just had a few words of German to start with, and then you're kind of in a world of speaking some German, like I was in Italian and French, etc.
Yeah.
It's
Well, you know,
wonderful.
the best opportunity to learn a language is to be immersed
Yeah,
and immersed in a culture.
exactly. Yes.
And that's where now actually my new thing is I'm striving to learn Spanish. Due to COVID, I'm back in Central Florida right now, but I have been living in Fort Lauderdale and very,
Yeah.
very much hope to go back here really soon.
Cool.
And I'm striving to learn Spanish. And so, you know, even at this age, you can teach an old dog new tricks, right?
That's right. Exactly.
And just like you can learn new tricks and you can learn to new stories in
Yes.
your brain
And new
and
habits. Yeah.
new habits. Well,
New positive habits. Yeah.
absolutely. Well, David, it's been such a pleasure chatting with you today.
It's been really great fun. Yes.
Absolutely. And again, everyone, we're going to have the show notes on outburo.com. That is outburo.com. That now says episodes up at the top. I have changed it from podcast because we now do so many more videos that also become podcasts. So do check that out. We'll also have this audio transcribed as best as possible quickly with artificial intelligence into text as well. So we will be on our YouTube channel as well as the 13 audio apps. And if you need or if you know of someone who has difficulty hearing, they'll be able to read the transcripts as well. Thank you so much. This is Dennis Velko with Out Bureau. You are listening to Out Bureau Voices, where LGBT professionals and entrepreneurs share their stories for you to thrive. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.